working immigration cases as they did on Trump's first term. And just to be clear, let's say there's 11 million undocumented people in this country. I just, never mind. I'm not going to make that point. The number of hours agents spent on child exploitation cases likely decreased even further over the summer and fall. Because this, like I said, this information and data, the data is fascinating. It came from two different FOIA lawsuits, Freedom of Information Act. The first one and the second one had different data. The second one being much worse, but then you also have to question, why is data changing over time? I don't know. The number of hours agents spent, oh yeah, I read that. Here, let's just move on. This is the other, so I'm going through 5 topics. Number one thing that has failed since Trump started his mass deportation money grab, illicit Iranian oil. Now let's just think all together, and this is for people whose brains work. Why would we stop tracking the tankers of illicit oil that are moving around? This is how Iran is funding their, military aspirations, is by illicitly selling oil all around the world. The majority of that oil goes to Russia. Trump is literally on his knees for Putin 24 hours a day. So remember how we talked about, I think in February and March 2025, about how illicit oil is illegal, right? It's not going through OPEC. They are moving oil, and primarily Russia was being sanctioned. They're being sanctioned or some of this goes to Venezuela. A lot of it crosses the Atlantic in tankers, right? But the majority of Iranian illicit oil is going to Russia. And Putin is Trump's daddy, who he's on his knees for 24 hours a day, right? So I was like, oh, that makes sense. For nearly a decade, a team of roughly 24 special agents from HSI and FBI and other cities have investigated Iran's efforts to evade international sanctions and sell oil on the black market. The cases often involve chasing a so-called ghost fleet of tankers carrying that oil to foreign ports. Iran uses the profits to fund its military and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which the United States has designated as a T group, right? But think about this, and I'm going to play Marjorie Taylor Greene. We're going to talk about Trump stalking margarine and all these things in a second. But one of the things Margarine said she's mad about is Trump had an Al-Qaeda terrorist in the White House last week and was like, yeah, you're an awesome guy. That is the current president of Syria. And I've talked about this before. Who is Syria's daddy? Putin. Syria is where Russia has a military base in the Middle East. Everything Trump does, in a lot of ways, you can all relate to him being on his knees for Putin. Now, and again, let's just talk about the 8 wars. Remember Trump said that he ended 8 wars? One of those was he was day one, the Ukraine-Russia war was going to stop. Has it stopped? No, it's worse. It's literally worse than it ever has been. It is continuing to go on. And Trump, whatever Putin has on him, is so serious that he had a former psycho that has been wanted around the world for crimes against humanity. Now the Syrian president, who has a Russian base on their land, and is embracing him on Veterans Day. Yes. And Margarine's like, that's crazy. Yeah, it's been crazy for the last 5 years. That's why I struggle with Margarine. Yes, this has all been very crazy while you backed it loudly the entire time. Sorry. I'm not going to harp on that because I think we all get it, but anti-terrorism intelligence. And a lot of this, again, goes into covering up for Russia. The DHS's major function is distributing intelligence reports about TISM, active, pew-pew incidents, and other threats across government. So I just want to say this. Anytime, like with the Charlie Kirk incident, one of the things I kept saying, and when MAGA, let's just say this, when MAGA are always in their feelings. If you want to blame someone, and I'm going to show you hard numbers soon, so then you can take it up. If you want to know why there's not enough people in the federal government, like agents that work on law enforcement, to protect people like Charlie Kirk, it's because of the money grab of mass deportation. And it turns out mass deportation doesn't benefit any of us. Well, people without billions of dollars. And local law enforcement authorities are now receiving far fewer intelligence reports than they normally would, according to people familiar with the ports. One official said the decline in information sharing has amounted to chipping away at everything that's been built since September 11th. So just understand, if any other Republicans are unalived domestically, don't talk to us about it. Trump has redirected high-level skilled people to monitoring Home Depot parking lots. Law enforcement training. Oh, this is super disturbing. The federal government's main law enforcement training academy has suspended many of its programs for non-immigration agents for the rest of the year. That's what I paid for. I care more about human trafficking, child exploitation, domestic teasm than targeting 72% of the people Trump has targeted have never committed a crime. You guys are out of your minds. And again, just in construction, we now know it's not mathematically helpful to terrorize undocumented people in this country. That has delayed classes for new recruits. Here, look, affected agencies. So again, don't look at the left and be like, what happened to Charlie Kirk? Affected agencies include the Secret Service, the Army Criminal Investigative Division, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. Oh, here's my favorite one. And the Energy Department's Office of Secure Transportation, which is responsible for safely moving nuclear weapons and components. Let's not train those people. That's the best idea Trump's ever had. We must focus our resources on surge-related training. That's what the government official that they asked about it. As a result, training programs for agencies not directly involved in rounding up brown people with melanin who may or may not, 72% of which have never committed a crime. Yeah. I want to keep going. This is a long article. Again, I put it in Discord as a gift article. Coast Guard missions. This is another interesting one. In June, Coast Guard officials agreed to redeploy 2 C-27 planes from Clearwater, Florida to Alexandria, Louisiana. That is where, I guess, the largest ICE detention facility is. And another plane from Sacramento to Mesa, Arizona. I think we have one of the second or third largest. Search and rescue planes from Alaska and North Carolina were also put on call. The redeployment of planes posed a, quote, high risk to mission fail for certain Coast Guard operations, one of the documents stated. Yeah, and it's worse than I'm just not going to, wait, let me. The DHS said that the Coast Guard had transported more than 7,300 immigrants so far this year. A Coast Guard spokesman said it, quote, carefully balances all operations and mission requirements, including search and rescue, to ensure readiness is not compromised. But it is, because our only focus in this country is making the grifter in chief money. And funneling people through the private prison system. If you're interested in following the money, look up, what is it, Core Civic and Geo Group. These are the largest private prisons that they're funneling people through. But there's a few others underneath that. Always follow the money. This is a huge grift. We are funneling innocent people who have never committed a crime who were supplementing our economy by working in places like the construction industry. And thank God there's still a few white people with brains, like that professor at the University of Utah, who correctly identified that this mass deportation, when we round up brown people, it harms the housing industry. It harms the construction industry. It harms uneducated white people's jobs in the construction industry. It harms educated white people's jobs in the construction industry. It harms everyone. But you guys know everything. Here's human trafficking. So we started with child exploitation, which are technically a different category. Now we are on human trafficking. The pressure to ramp up low-level immigration enforcement has had negative impacts on more complex human smuggling and sex and labor trafficking cases. So I think sometime last week, some idiot, I don't know, was it Will? It was some guy who was like, there are 500,000 kids missing. And I was like, do you want to know what that is? Which, by the way, that same number of children were missing during Trump's first administration, and same number, actually there's more, are missing now. But that's not like we don't know how many children, let alone people, are trafficked. We just know, hey, these are children who crossed into the United States without guardians. We either found a familial relation or some sort of foster care situation. And those, like, that number of missing children is just like, they call, no one answers the phone, and it's no contact, right? No call, no show, essentially. Like, that's what that means. But that doesn't, we have a huge trafficking problem in this country. And it is literally fueled by Republican states lowering the threshold of child labor laws. This is what they're doing. Because you need to think logically, MAGA. I know you can do it. This could be the time where you make a connection. You're like, I want all those brown people to get out of here. Okay. Who's going to do their jobs? This is why child labor laws have been rolled back in every red state in the last 5 years. This started in 2020, rolling back child labor laws. So, miss me with the BS. If you care about children, you do not support Donald Trump. This is insanity. One federal prosecutor, oh yeah, this is tragic. One federal prosecutor who spoke on the condition of anonymity said that cases were stagnating. That means no one's doing anything with them and they're just kind of rotting in place, MAGA. You can look up that word. As Homeland Security investigators were sidetracked with immigration roundups, because that's what we need to be doing. We need to be rounding up construction workers that would make the prices of houses go down, which assist trafficking investigation, have been reassigned. These people have been reassigned. The human trafficking people have been reassigned to Trump's anti-crime crackdown in Washington, according to a federal law enforcement. And one former law enforcement official who now works in the travel industry said that after he tried to report trafficking at hotels to Homeland Security investigators, he was told that agents might not be able to investigate urgently because they were lurking around outside of Home Depots trying to catch people who were trying to lower the prices of our homes. And this, I'm just showing you this because I thought this is, when you have huge data sets, not just a random guy that says men shouldn't wear makeup and has a full face of makeup on every day. But when you really handle data, you do, if it's reputable, you post the methodology. And I thought this was quite interesting. Through a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit, right, FOIA, the New York Times obtained Department of Homeland Security statistical reports that indicate the monthly number of hours worked, arrests made, and search warrants executed by Homeland Security investigation staff working on investigations into child exploitation, immigration, and other crimes. The Times, so they filed the lawsuit and they received 2 responses. The Times received 2 responses, one generated in April and another in June, with monthly figures going back to 2022 and 2007, respectively. The response created in June included some figures that were greater than those of the April report. So let's just be clear. What the New York Times is saying here is that they received a set of data, a set of data in April that was changed in June. And to my last Uber driver who was driving me to the Denver airport, it's like, I don't trust numbers. Numbers could say anything. No, math always tells the truth. People lie. And if you go into this, so they explain how they erred on the side of caution and like all this other stuff. But I just thought it's so interesting that they're like, yeah, we received 2 data dumps, and in the second there were different numbers. I find that very interesting because data numbers don't lie. I've been scared of math my whole life, and I realized math will set us all free. Oh, look, I'm sorry. I forgot I took a screenshot of the rest of it. Here we go. As a result, the Times took a cautious approach in quantifying trends to estimate the hours worked during February, March, and April, the first 3 full months of the administration. The Times took into account the percentage increase for a comparable period between the 2 reports because the revisions followed a less predictable pattern for arrests and victims. That is the shadiest shit ever. The Times decided against citing direct figures for those categories, although the provisional figures also showed declines. Do you understand what I'm telling you? They received a data dump and the numbers were changed in result to trafficking victims and things of that nature the second time, but still showed bad. And I love how I said, like, I can't remember when it was. I'm trying to think. I think it was like March or April of last year. I was like, data analysis. I was talking about how everyone was like downloading and saving their research and data and exporting it from federal websites because they were terrified it was going to be manipulated or disappeared. But I'm just a woman with a tiny brain who can read. Now, let me show you, in all fairness, MAGA, let's go to the far right with it. This is a far right think tank, Cato at Liberty, catoinstitute.org. That's why I always read their statistical analysis, because they are so far to the right that they're, this is from David J. Byer. I just wanted to talk about a couple things because I think the math is so nuts. Okay, according to ICE enforcement and removal, it's enforcement and removal operations. So when you hear ERO, it stands for enforcement and removal operations. Given by ERO to someone outside the agency who shared it with Cato, ICE is receiving assistance from nearly 17,000 non-ERO agents, meaning these people who are supposed to be stopping people from posting child porn or trafficking kids or trafficking women. All of 17,000 people have been redirected, including 14,500 federal criminal law enforcement officers. Separately, the DHS revealed in a now deleted post, but you can go to Cato and find that, like their screenshot, yesterday, that ICE has already trained and unleashed 8,501 state and local police as 287 task force officers who can independently conduct ICE arrests. It states that it has over 2,000 in training. So again, every federal, and I just again want to bring us back to reality. The point was to drain the swamp, right? Was that not the point? Every single time you idiots put your trust in Trump, he fails you. Oh, wait, what was it? Hold on. It's coming to me. No new wars. We are literally, what is it now? What is the total? Is it 21 or 22? We are ending people's lives on, I think it's 83 people who've been unalived with zero proof, which is a violation of the Constitution. You can't go into international waters and unalive people and provide zero proof that they were who you said you were. And Trump, and in my opinion, to distract from the Epstein files, because he knows they're coming, right? And we'll get to that next. We're almost there, I promise. The terrible facts of how awful this is are almost done. But quite literally, in order to distract, remember how, and I think one of Trump's sore points is he is a failed coup leader, right? Trump wants to be able to say, I sent the U.S. military into a country and I toppled it. And if you don't know why he's doing this with Venezuela, it's twofold. One, the oil underneath their feet. Not just the oil Venezuela has, like we have sweet crude oil. I'm trying to think of how Mr. Global explained this to me. We have like sweet light crude oil, and I think there's like heavy sour crude in Venezuela. And then recently, when Mr. Global used to join my live last year, we were talking about the oil deposits that were just discovered underneath. What is to the east of it? Right to the east of Venezuela? Sorry, I should know this. Is it Guyana? Yeah. Larger oil reserves than even Venezuela has, which are some of the largest in the world, were now discovered to the right underneath Guyana. Yeah, I'm going to reset the goals. Sorry, it's hard for me. I'm doing technical things. I promise I will in a second, and then hopefully everyone will support me. If you like my work, please tip me. I need to replace a computer desperately, so you can tip me, you can gift me, whatever, and I'll update all the goals. I just got to get all this out of my brain. I promise it's almost done. So, again, Trump is going to do what? What did he do in his first term that no one understood? Why did Venezuelans receive temporary protected status, TPS, at the end of Trump's first term? It's because nobody knew, and that idiot is the only president in American history to not do a coup correctly. Like, if there's one thing Americans can accurately do, like, which I despise as a history major, I don't think it's good to go in, and if there's anything we should have learned from history, it's that when we topple governments and create power vacuums, what comes next is much worse. Like, so you have to have a plan, which, not to get too much into history, but that's why I'd say look at Iraq, right? Get in, get out. Have a plan is much more successful than, what do they call it? The graveyard of nations or whatever, Afghanistan, where we all just take turns failing for 3 decades. And I mean, by we, I mean Russia, Great Britain, the UK, the United States, right? You don't try a coup without a plan. Trump tried a coup and nobody knows. But, well, I mean, people who know about politics know and drive him nuts by poking at him with it. So I surprised he's like, now we're really going to go in there. And all of his weird oil cronies, they want the oil. They want access to that oil underneath Venezuela. And now we know there's even larger reserves, I think, closer to the surface, better oil, and easier to access in Guyana. And there's basically no infrastructure there. So just the same way Trump's like, we're going to build. Let me just hypothetically say something. I think hypothetically in a lot of ways, possibly even up to including, but I don't know this to be a fact. I'm just speculating. What if Trump was trying to cover for a lot of people in the Epstein files? Not to say he's not a creep. I think if you don't understand that Trump's a creep by now, then you also might be a creep. But I'm talking about the Epstein files. What if Trump agreed to protect a bunch of people in the Epstein files, possibly up to, I don't know, a prime minister of Israel who may or may not be a creep, who was actively working with Jeffrey Epstein, and Trump wants, in his own words, to, build some beautiful beachfront Trump Tower property in Palestine. Like, this is always Trump's angle, is what's in it for me, right? He tried to do a coup in Venezuela for his oil cronies, who we know actively bribed him. And now he's doing it again. It's like, MAGA. Now, I'm talking to obviously no billionaires are watching, except maybe Tony, because he loves me. But MAGA, none of this will ever benefit you. This isn't socialism. This isn't, hey, whatever. Remember when he said we were going to invade Greenland? That was because the polar ice caps are melting, and there are so many valuable minerals underneath the ice. He's not going to give you any of it, idiots. You get zero. Same thing. If we go to war with Venezuela and U.S. soldiers have to unalive, you know who benefits from that? Not any of us. None of us. Just corporations and billionaires. None of us benefit from people dying in wars. So again, no new wars has turned into Trump is just randomly using the military to unalive people whenever he feels like it. And now we're going to war with Venezuela. So if you can be honest, Trump ran on day one, I end the war between Ukraine and Russia. It is at its height, and I mean that. You can do your own research, which you probably can't, but I'm just telling you. The war between Ukraine and Russia is worse than it's ever been, and now he is starting a war in Venezuela. So he has lied to you. America First is investing in Americans. At every turn, he has done the opposite. The sooner you realize that, the sooner we'll all be safer. Like, that's how I feel like I need to say it. We're in danger. Oh, here's what I want to get these stats right because it's fascinating. So, here's the stats from federal agencies of people who've been diverted from their normal jobs to lurk around outside Home Depots or whatever. DHS 68, or Air and Marine 68, DHS CBP Border Patrol 335, DHS CBP Office of Field Operations 288. Department of Homeland Security does a lot of things. Thank you for that gift. That's amazing. Not necessarily stalking brown people who are helping our economy. DHS ICE Homeland Security Investigation 6,198. DHS U.S. Secret Service 1. Department of Defense 35. Here's where I get real uncomfortable. Department of Justice ATF, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives 1,778. Because we have no problems with firearms. The number one cause of unaliving in this country for children is some rando accessing a semi-automatic weapon and pew-pewing them down while they are in school trying to learn arithmetic. And we directed 1,778 people from the ATF to lurk around Home Depots and snatch up the people that were lowering the cost of construction. Makes perfect sense. Department of Justice, Bureau of Prisons, 11. Department of Justice, DEA. So the way, and this is important because Trump's whole premise, right, is that, hey, we are in a crisis because the cartels are attacking. And that's why I am just using the U.S. military in international waters, which is a violation of international law, maritime law, and the Constitution because Congress never approved it, to unalive. It's now 21 boats, I think 82 or 83 people. And he's redirected. So if, in fact, it is a crisis, everyone should be joining the DEA. Wouldn't that make sense? He has redirected 2,181 DEA agents to terrorize people, 72% of which now we know have done nothing but cross the border, which is a civil misdemeanor. Department of Justice, so the U.S. Marshals, 650. Department of State, Diplomatic Security, 93. Which, when you actually, I'll show you in a second, but when you get into the percentages, because it's like, hey, it's hard to conceptualize this when I don't know how many there are. On average, it's 20%. He took 20% of these agencies' manpower, and we're like, hey, go sit outside Home Depots and be creepy. Department of State, so Diplomatic Security, 93. Department of Treasury, 20. Oh, Internal Revenue Service. We took accountants and we're like, go lurk outside Home Depots. So that federal law enforcement total was 14,498. Then you can look at the local total. Police departments, 38. Sheriffs, 167. State police, 676. Partners, not task force, 17. DHS, 1,423, which brings the total to 16,819. And then state and local task force officers are another 8,501, bringing the total to 25,320, which was the title. Trump's redirected over 25,000 people to do this job. Look at this. This is what I'm saying now. When you just hear the numbers without context, it's like, okay, who cares? This is huge. This diversion is not a small part of many of these agencies. It includes 1 in 5 U.S. Marshals. I would rather U.S. Marshals do their real job. 1 in 5 FBI agents. Yeah, can we get them back on the child exploitation and trafficking? Trump's probably scared they're going to find something. Half. So let me just explain to you. Trump violating the Constitution over and over, one of his main arguments, if not the main argument, is we're in an emergency against the cartels. If that was true, why would you take half of the DEA agents, 2,181 of 4,620, and redirect them to lurking outside Home Depot? If, in fact, we were in a crisis, over 2/3, I want you to think about that. The number one cause of unaliving for children in this country are pew-pews. And he took 2/3. MAGA, you don't know numbers, but that's bigger than half. That's bigger than half, MAGA, of the ATF. 1,778 of 2,572. And, wait for it, 90% of Homeland Security investigations. 90%. 6,198 of 7,100. I know, it's hard. You guys have stayed here, and I know you hate numbers. I know. We've reached our point of being able to listen, and I will not do any more, I promise. But I really need you to know. And let me just go back in case anyone wants to screenshot it. So there's the New York Times article I put in the Discord as a gift article. And then this is this is the Cato Institute. They're a far right-wing think tank. And David J. Byer, he's a great person to follow as well, because he kind of just puts stats and things and makes it easier to listen to. But you can also, 10 of 10 recommend following the Cato Institute. It's kind of let me know. That's what I'm saying. Numbers don't lie. Like, whether I go to a far right think tank or a far left, numbers tell the same story if you're not manipulating them and lying. That's my point. If you're not, people lie. Numbers don't lie. So, I mean, I find that horrific. If we're not... So in order to chase around people that have committed no crimes and we're making our lives better, we have basically sacrificed children in this country. And that's something I'll never be able to get over. But I want to point this out. So these articles, the New York Times article came out today. Not to say somebody is a genius, but everybody should understand. If you are not following on Blue Sky, this is his X account. Aaron Reichlin-Melnick is the most brilliant mind in immigration law. And he makes it's not just him spitting out numbers, like follow him. He talks about individual cases. If you want to learn more and learn what to care about and how to find it, please follow Aaron Reichlin-Melnick. This man changed my life. So I just want to point out this clip. It is the clip pinned to the top of his X profile. He testifies in front of Congress probably on average 5 to 6 times a year since I think I first figured out who he was in like 2020. He's in front of Congress testifying 5 to 6 times a year. And I will never forget the first time I saw this clip. And I played it, and everyone's like, you don't know, like, we don't know what's going to happen. So think about this. He gave this testimony under oath in Congress on March 25th, 2025. And now right-wing think tanks are like, oh, breaking news. No, it was not. This guy was literally just like, hey, here's everything that's going on. And nobody noticed. I noticed, Aaron. I noticed, Aaron. You were right the whole time. Thank you, Ange, for the $50 for my new computer. And thanks for the education for the masses. That's amazing. And Laura, I'm so impressed by the amount of prep you do for your show. Fantastic. TikTok, my dog can draw. I do a lot of prep, but that's, hey, if you were raised by a very intelligent narcissist who accepted no errors, and if you did the best you could, you might get one drop of love every single week, then you would end up like me too. Okay, so this is the clip. So now that I showed you those 2 articles, this guy was under oath in Congress in March, like, hey, this is all happening.
Chairman Guest, Ranking Member Correa, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. My name is Aaron Reichlin-Melnick, and I am Senior Fellow at the American Immigration Council, a nonpartisan nonprofit organization which envisions a nation where immigrants are embraced, American communities are enriched, and justice prevails for all. There is no doubt that President Biden's record at the border was mixed. As we have argued, Biden made measurable progress at restoring the asylum system while failing to lead on a national level to respond to the unprecedented rise in migration. True, the administration eventually settled on a strategy in 2024 that produced results, including a drop in border apprehensions of 80%. But the legality and long-term viability...
To clarify where we're at, because I know most people in here have listened to a lot of debates on the border. From, oh God, it's been so long, from June 2024 to December 2024, there was an 80% drop in, oh my God, what is that word? Encounters, because we encounters at the border under Joe Biden. But what he's saying is, and Rollo opened my eyes to this, and what I'm learning, these methods, ruling through executive order and all these things are very questionable, and the human rights aspect of it is the most questionable.
The ability of this strategy was questionable, and it was ultimately too little too late. However, Joe Biden is no longer president. And while President Biden ordered DHS to focus on immigrants who are recent entrants or public safety threats, President Trump is focused on arresting and deporting all removable immigrants, including longtime residents, those with no criminal records, families, children, and undocumented workers. Trump has made immigration enforcement the top priority of federal law enforcement, above fentanyl trafficking, above terrorism, and even above protecting our children from predators. This obsession with draconian immigration enforcement will make us all less safe, If continued over the next 4 years, it may also impoverish us as a climate of fear and large-scale removals cause the economy to shrink and Americans to lose their jobs. Over the last 2 months, the Trump administration has reassigned thousands of federal law enforcement officers away from their normal duties to instead carry out low-level civil immigration enforcement arrests and prosecutions, including against many people with no criminal record. This has diverted resources away from serious public safety threats. According to Reuters, at Homeland Security investigations, which over the last 2 years reported saving 3,000 children from predators, scores of agents who specialize in child sexual exploitation have been reassigned to immigration enforcement. Rather than protecting kids, these special agents are staking out immigrant workers' homes and taking down license plates. At the Department of Justice, Attorney General Bondi declared on her first day that immigration enforcement is the top priority of the agency, above nearly everything else. Even the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force has been directed to assist in the execution of President Trump's immigration initiatives. But it doesn't stop there. 25% of the DEA's workforce has been reassigned to immigration enforcement. Rather than tracking down drug traffickers, DEA agents are combing through old files to find cases where prosecutors can add illegal entry or reentry charges years later. At the ATF, a full 80% of agents have been reassigned to immigration. Even the IRS isn't immune, with special agents.
I read that statistic of 80%, which that's a recent article, and he knew this and was accurately knowing this March 25th, 2025. That everyone had been redirected, that children were no longer safe and were being exploited, and no one was investigating it.
Trained in financial crimes being made to go after random immigrants instead. In a world of limited resources,
about the IRS agents, and they're like, hey, you're a professional accountant who's trained in high level like forensic accounting, go get those people outside Home Depot.
Diverting federal law enforcement to the mass deportation agenda will have an obvious effect. When HSI agents tracking online pedophiles are forced to stake out undocumented workers, our children are not safer. When DEA agents investigating drug rings are told to find immigrant families who missed court dates, our communities are not safer. And when FBI agents tracking terrorists are told to focus on immigration arrests instead, our nation is not safer. These concerns are not hypothetical. In 2018, under the zero-tolerance policy, border prosecutors were ordered to charge all migrants with illegal entry. The result was clear. There was a large drop in...
Sure, you understand what he's talking about. So he's talking about in 2018 when Trump started putting kids in cages, right, who were unaccompanied minors and all this. He's talking about a case study, which I talked about, I think, last May, that we already know when you redirect people from their area of focus, it does not help. It just gets worse.
Safer. These concerns are not hypothetical. In 2018, under the zero-tolerance policy, border prosecutors were ordered to charge all migrants with illegal entry. The result was clear. There was a large drop in drug trafficking cases brought by federal prosecutors because prosecutors were spending night and day focused on migrant parents instead of going after the drug traffickers. This administration's priorities are backwards. While Trump is spending billions of dollars on detaining ever greater numbers of immigrants, his administration is slashing services for Americans. Money is pouring into the pockets of private prison companies at the same time as USDA is ending contracts, giving children access to fresh local food, and Social Security is closing offices nationwide. Rather than a single-minded focus...
Remember, this is March 2025. Is he not a prophet? And that's the thing. Data tells a story, and he just analyzes data, but Mag is like, I didn't see this coming, that I wouldn't be able to afford food. Well, math data saw this go. Like, he sounds like a prophet, but he was just like, hey, here's what data is telling me is going to happen. And think, this is last March. And if someone had listened, who wasn't a sadist, the ends justify the means type, maybe we could have stopped it. But as long as you elect Republicans, suffering is the point. Culling the population is the point. The doctors at the CDC who defected and left said, I'm beholden to the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. And the strategy at the current CDC is Machiavellian eugenics, which, is to cull the population.
Money is pouring into the pockets of private prison companies at the same time as USDA is ending contracts, giving children access to fresh local food, and Social Security is closing offices nationwide. Rather than a single-minded focus on mass deportation, this administration and Congress should pursue common-sense policies that help American communities. We need a system that can resolve cases quickly while also maintaining fairness, due process, and meaningful accountability for all actors. That includes a path to permanent legal status for undocumented immigrants who have resided in this country for decades without breaking other laws. This would build American prosperity, encourage the rule of law, and break the power of unscrupulous employers who exploit workers. In an option between self-defeating mass deportations and a prosperity-building path to legal status, the choice is clear. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
In an option between self-defeating mass deportations, that is the truth. And this man was able to look at data on March 25th, 2025, under oath in Congress, and say everything that now a right-wing think tank is like, look, I figured this out. And not to say, I'm not saying those people didn't know. I'm just saying, this is the point. And I don't want to hurt MAGA's feelings, because I know I do that a lot, and I don't want them to feel like I'm just trying to accuse you of not being too good at reading. But I knew this then, but things weren't bad enough for you. Oh yeah, and this is actually a perfect segue, and I don't want to make this point, but I'm going to make it anyways. So I knew this. The day he was under oath in Congress, I was in my bathtub, that's what I do. I do shafts. I call them shafts. It's when the water is pouring down on you, and you're kind of in a bath waiting for the tub to fill up, and I try to count the drops on my chest to regulate, because I've been diagnosed with PTSD and CPTSD, so it's something I do to kind of reset, the mammalian dive reflex. Another thing you could do is stick your face in a bucket of ice water, and I was just nobody's gonna get it. No, and I was listening to him say this, and the point was then, as it always is, what were Republicans saying on March 25th, 2025. Everything's fine. Dear leader said it's going to be good, right? Why can't you guys learn before you learn the hard way? And I'm saying that as someone who has learned the hard way many times in my life. And my learning from learning the hard way in horrific ways is we don't need to learn that way, right? And that's the issue I take with MAGA. And let me just, I played a clip of Jasmine Crockett talking about the recently elected Attorney General of, someone needs to correct me if I'm wrong, is it Virginia? Jay Jones, the man whose text messages were put out there. Is it that he's, okay, thank you, Dolph. Okay. Because I was I don't want to get the wrong state. Remember, and I was saying he was comparing Trump to Pol Pot. Well, I recently was looking at screenshots of all his text messages, and I think I mentioned it last week as well. And I think the thing people were trying to say was so horrific is that he was saying, basically, Republicans don't learn until it's personal, and this person in the text message was you're implying his children should unalive, and he's well, they don't learn until it's personal. Look, March 25th, 2025, He said every single thing. And that New York Times article that's now out, that Cato, the right-wing think tank article, people are talking about today. Like, all of this, we already knew. And apparently, and I want to be clear, I'm not talking about just Republicans. I think it is a general human experience. Until you are miserable, you're like, wait, this sucks. And that is the problem that we have and feel inside minority groups, right? With queer people, with black people, with brown people, is we're like, hey, we're dying here. We're suffering. Nobody cares. With women, hey, we are disproportionately dying of sepsis since you decided to take our rights to health care away. You are having the exact opposite effect. And let me just say, actual math, not weird Republican men's idiotic feeling, shows you're not stopping one AB by limiting women's access to health care. You're not. You're just increasing the maternal mortality rate and the mortality rate among women, period. That's all. You're saving no one and nothing. So keep it up. And you're just increasing the sepsis rate, the maternal mortality rate amongst women. Anyways, sorry. I just get so upset when I think about this. And so I guess my point is, Jay Jones, what he was texting, like, that line of logic is absolutely true, in my opinion. Look, this was March 25th, 2025. I played this clip then, and everyone's like, this is bullshit. Like, oh, fear mongering. I remember literally having to sit here. This is recorded somewhere on YouTube. Go find it. And people are like, you're just fear mongering. None of this is ever going to happen. Well, and now today, everyone's like, this is awful. What's going on? Yeah. That is the point. For people in America, oftentimes, and I'll say, the cross-section of the Republican Party that's uneducated and or in cognitive dissonance and or benefiting off the mega cottage industry, like, they learn the hardest way, right? The literal hardest way. And I think this is a good segue to go into Marjorie Taylor Greene, because part of that interview, while Trump is just like tearing into her, people are like, yesterday was a very dark day on X. I actually sent something to the Discord yesterday because I was like, you guys don't understand what is happening right now. Like, Marjorie Taylor Greene might have to go into hiding because Trump is trying to end her life for waking up. You know what I mean? For being like, oh. And one of the things, like, Dana Bash actually asks her, like, okay, so, are you sorry for sending this message of hate? Are you sorry now that you are like, we shouldn't, now that you're experiencing the hate, are you sorry? And she's like, yeah, I am sorry. But that is a perfect example when everyone's like, the Attorney General of Virginia is a monster. No, and let me just say this very clearly. I have endless empathy, right? But when I know mathematically and my brain can work and say Trump is a problem, like, to say that you want someone to experience the pain you're experiencing, so maybe they would change, which in Trump's case it wouldn't work, is not wrong. It seems to be, and I'm just saying, the only way my brain works is just, I see this long trailing pattern of who someone is. And the only thing I know about Republicans is until their entire life is shook. Thomas Massey is another example. His wife died, and, he's just like, F it, now I'm going to tell the truth, right? Like, until you feel certain pains, it seems like, I don't think that should be the way, but it seems like especially on the right, until you experience personal loss or personal pain or personal fear, these people will not change. And I think it's crazy I'm glad. Well, actually, let me just be more clear. I don't know Jay Jones, the AG, but I'm so glad that the left can look past that and recognize, like, that is the truth on the right. That is the pattern. Something horrible has to happen to these people, and then they're like, oh, this sucks. And it's like, yeah, that's what everyone's been saying this entire time. And I do wholeheartly believe, let me say this, if let's say, however, what was the number of the first group? Of 49 white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed American citizens were snatched up and taken to Secot in El Salvador. Can you imagine? Can you imagine where we would be now? Can you imagine? The lawsuits, the datelines about their pain. There is an 81-page human rights campaign report on the torture that those people who turned out, the vast majority of them who were legally inside the U.S., they were tortured, they were beaten, some of them were raped. And I just want you to picture, if they weren't brown, if they were white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Americans, this would be a very different conversation. But because they're brown, it's like, oopsie, oopsie. We just sent a bunch of Americans to a prison camp outside of U.S. jurisdiction where they were tortured. And by prison camp, I mean concentration camp. Oops. The majority of them were legally in the U.S. Oops. Like, it is. Oh, 4 of them were women. Oops. Literally. They accidentally mailed women to a men's-only prison, and even, what's his name? What's the dictator of El Salvador's name? He was like, yeah, no, we're not doing this to women. What's his name? It's going to come to me. Can someone just type in the chat the name of the Bukele? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yeah. And he even and apparently, and this is just in my readings, like, Trump's like, no, just take him. He's like, yeah, no, we are not taking women in this prison, you weirdo. Like, so I actually wholeheartedly agree with the new Attorney General of Virginia that until MAGA Republicans personally experience loss, personally experience hurt, personally experience fear, they don't seem to move any other way. All of a sudden, Marjorie Taylor Greene's like, I want to... Let me just show you. Let me show you what happens when Republicans experience, MAGA Republicans experience what they've been subjecting on everyone else on a daily basis. And whilst I'm pulling this up, let's all think in our minds of the unbelievably... Marjorie Taylor Greene, my first knowledge that she existed on Earth was her terrorizing a child, following him and terrorizing him because a child had the guts to speak at a congressional hearing about pew pew violence in schools. It was someone from a Florida school, and she stalked and terrorized him and screamed at a child for 5 minutes. And if you don't know who that child was, it's David Hogg, you know, who's now a very active progressive in the Democratic Party. That's who she was screaming at. She was screaming at a child whose friends had been pew-pewed down And he was just, at that point, he wasn't such a, he's a very formidable force now. But imagine, this is a child who showed up just to tell, Congress, like, this needs to change. And in order to get, her whatever, likes on the internet, she stalked him and belittled him and shamed him and screamed at him for minutes while he tried to run away from her. Like, so let's all just remember who this person is, just saying. Okay, well, actually, and let me show you what Trump is. I think it's fair. If you're in the Discord, join the Discord, link in bio, because I was posting this stuff last night because Trump went off on Margarine. Like, oh, your most loyal soldier you're done with? Well, first of all, I guess I'll just say this. Trump, so I guess it's so, okay, congratulations, Indiana. You know what I find ironic? Indiana, not the whole state, but one part of Indiana rejects daylight savings just like Arizona does. And I find it so ironic. So Trump wanted to force Indiana to redistrict and gerrymander so he could have more seats. And there's, I guess, a couple of people who have a conscience in the Republican state legislature, and they're like, yeah, no. And Trump was counting on Indiana. And I mean that because I've been following this. Trump thought Indiana's going to do what I say. And apparently, this is exactly what happened during the find me some votes. He went to Arizona and tried to threaten Rusty Bowers. Don't come for Mormons because Heavenly Father is their real God. They mean it, right? Like, this is what he did in Arizona. He went to the Speaker of the House, Rusty Bowers, was like, find me these votes. And Rusty's like, find me some evidence that anything you're saying is true. I read this indictment, like, on this live member, and Rudy Giuliani's like shows up to the meeting like greasy and sweating, and Rusty Bowers is like, where's the evidence? And he's like, I left it in my hotel room. And he's like, your hotel room is like 5 feet away, go get it. And they never did. So apparently Indiana has a few Republicans who know the difference between right and wrong, and Trump is furious. Very disappointed in Indiana State Senate Republicans led by Rhino, Rod Bray, and Greg Good for not wanting to redistrict their state, allowing the United States Congress to perhaps gain 2 more Republican seats. Oh, the Democrats have done redistricting for years. Absolutely not. That's a lie. What Trump is doing outside of a census year, I mean, I didn't know it wasn't illegal, but I guess because of John Roberts and the Roberts Supreme Court, a president can just commit as many crimes as he wants within reason, and that's fine. Like, what are you talking about? Anyways, the Democrats have done redistricting for years. No, they haven't. And as a matter of fact, I invite anybody who would like to take up that debate to look up how many times the conservative Supreme Court have struck down unbiased redistricting maps in the South that would give 1 more seat to a black district. Like, are you okay? I mean, of course he's not okay, and he also can't read, so he doesn't know. Because of these 2 politically correct gentlemen, if politically correct means they are not criminals, then I guess that can you imagine? Trump is now like, these 2 non-criminals need to go. Why aren't they folding like lawn chairs? And a few others, they could be depriving Republican majority in the House. A very big deal. California is trying to pick up 5 seats, and no one is complaining about that. It's weak Republicans that cause our country such problems. It's why we have crazy policies. and ideas that are so bad for America. Is that why? Is that why we have them? I think it might not be why. Also, a friend of mine, Governor Mike Braun, perhaps is not working the way he should to get necessary votes. He means blackmail, threaten, you know what I mean? Leverage. I guess he's not operating like a low-level mob boss from Queens. Considering that, Mike wouldn't be governor without me. Not even close. Is disappointing. Any Republican that votes against this important redistricting, potentially having an impact on America itself, should be primaried. Indiana is a state. Yes, thank you, weirdo. Thank you for correctly identifying that. With strong, smart, and patriotic people, they want us to see our country win and want to make America great again. Senators Bray, Good, and the others to be released to the public later this afternoon. Do you know? Do you understand? He's threatening people and saying, anybody who actually has a sense of ethics and right or wrong, I'm going to release your name so you'll be stalked, harassed, doxxed within an inch of your life. And MAGA's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, this is horrific. They want to see our country win and to make America great again. Senators Bray, Good, and the others to be released to the public later this afternoon should do their job and do it now. If not, let's get them out of office. He's literally saying if these people aren't willing to commit a crime and have any sense of ethics, that we have to get rid of them. Can you imagine? Like, what the kind of world are we living in? Now, let me get to the Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff, because I'll get to that later. That's actually escalated since then. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a disgrace to our great Republican Party. This is last night, and I sent this to the Discord, because I was like, when I started to see all the threats that were like building up on X, I was like, this is insane. I am withdrawing my endorsement of Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of the great state of Georgia over the past few weeks, despite my creating record achievements for our country. None of those have happened, including a total and complete victory on the shutdown. I can't imagine telling lies like this. Closed borders, another lie. Low taxes for billionaires. No men in women's sports or transgender for everyone. Ending DEIs. None of these things are factually correct. Stopping Biden's record-setting inflation. Again, you started managing the pandemic, mismanaged the economy, and this is I'm on my last nerve with MAGA who can't count to find their, to get out of a paper bag. Trump did nothing. Biden recovered from a pandemic. Trump has made our country exponentially worse because he's a grifter who's stealing from us and giving tax breaks to billionaires. Do you understand the difference between a worldwide unavoidable pandemic and grifter tin stealing? This man was not worth $1 billion before he went into the White House, because some of us can count. He was worth hundreds of millions of dollars, cash poor, property rich. His net worth is now over $3 billion. This man is a grifter, and I want MAGA, just close your eyes for a second because your brains don't work so good, and picture if this was Joe Biden, or worse, Barack Obama. If Barack Obama had $100 million and then 8 months into his first term had $3 billion, what would you all be up to? What would you be saying? Not what you're saying now, is my guess. You guys are giant hypocrites who can't read and can't count. Anyways, I'm withdrawing my support and endorsement of Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of the great state of Georgia over the past few weeks, despite my creating record achievements for our country, a total and complete victory on the shutdown, blah, blah, closed borders, low taxes, no... Anyways, biggest regulation cuts in history, stopping 8 wars. Not one of these things is accurate. Rebuilding our military, being respected by every country in the world. MAGA, you guys don't know how to use your own supercomputer, which is your phone. But if you ever figure out what a VPN is, I highly, highly recommend you to use it to really find out what the